You can tell this is a construction event by all the Tonka trucks out in the Toys for Tots box. Thanks for donating, and thanks for coming. So as I was preparing for this, I came across a couple numbers that sort of speak to the reason why I think this is an important event for us today, and an important panel. So I'll just run through some of those numbers real quick. According to the National Association of Home Builders, 30% of construction workers in the home building field left the industry during the housing bust 8 years ago. As of 2 months ago, the association estimates that there's about 200,000 unfilled construction jobs in the U.S. It's a jump of about 81% in the last 2 years. And according to the AGC of America, there are on average about 17% fewer construction workers on jobs across the U.S. than during the market's peak. Also, in a recent survey, 72% of firms said they were having trouble finding workers. And that's what we hear all the time at the Daily Reporter. And then in Wisconsin specifically, according to Nick Novak, who's in the audience today, the state will need 82,246 new skilled workers over the next 3 years. So that's that's all stuff that we deal with on a daily basis at the Daily Reporter, and we report about, and that's something that I'm sure everybody here has seen and heard about. So that's why this panel is important today, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. From left to right, Alex Hank, go ahead.
Yes, hi. My name is Alex Zank. I cover construction development news around the state for the Daily Reporter. I've been with the paper a little over a year now, and I can say, similar to what Dave said just a few minutes ago, the people that I speak with regularly, number one issue definitely is the shortage of skilled workers on projects around the state.
I'm Kelly Tudo. I'm with Associated Builders and Contractors. I'm their vice president. I've been with ABC for 20 years. And I've kind of devoted my whole career to, developing workers in the construction trades. We run an apprenticeship program, about 1,100 apprentices in the state.
Thanks, Kelly.
Pete Cafaro, Vice President of Business Services with Employ Milwaukee. Employ Milwaukee is the Workforce Investment Board for Milwaukee County. There's 11 of them across the state of Wisconsin. Every region in the country has one. We're a federally authorized nonprofit, authorized by legislation passed in 2014, and it's renewed about every 10 years, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. We serve as a public foundation and as the workforce and planning body for workforce issues. We serve both job seekers and businesses.
I'm Terry McGowan. I'm the President Business Manager of the Operating Engineers Local 139 for the state of Wisconsin. We represent 9,300 men and women who run heavy equipment and build our infrastructure throughout this state. I've worked out in the field as a heavy equipment operator for many years. I ran our apprenticeship program for a number of years, and eventually I was dumb enough to take this job.
Well, it's smart enough to come up here. Thanks, Terry. So let's jump into it. First, we'll talk a little bit about how we got here with our labor shortage, and then what we can do to tackle the problem. So, Alex, let's start with you. I know you've done a lot of good reporting on the labor shortage. What's the biggest reason that you see for the shortage going on across the state?
Well, through the conversations I've had with union leaders, workforce development officials, and contractors, it seems like I don't know if I could point to one specific reason, but several common themes. As already mentioned by you, Joe, just a little bit ago, Great Recession had a lot to do with it. Lost a lot of skilled workers at that time that, that's either through retirement or, they just found work in other industries that, just better prospects at the time. But, now that we're out of that, there's a big building boom in Milwaukee and elsewhere, so there's, plenty of demand for skilled labor, but now the biggest challenges beyond what I already mentioned include things like simply finding that next generation of skilled workers, and that starts for a lot of people as early as the high school level around there. Now it's not only just attracting them, making sure they're aware that there are good paying jobs in the construction industry, but also once they get the proper training, get involved in apprenticeship programs, also retaining them. That's another big issue. And I think a lot of it has to do around, I don't know, I've heard a few different reasons as far as like recruitment goes, but there's kind of been a change of culture from what I've heard. People just not realizing that those jobs, for whatever reason, there's a lot of emphasis on going to college, getting that 4-year degree, without a lot of kids and their parents realizing that you can, when you're training as an apprentice, you get paid to do that work. You don't tack on a lot of debt. So I guess it's an issue with public relations and marketing, all that kind of other stuff. Just making sure that people know those jobs are there and getting the training they need.
Terry, what do you think is the reason behind the shortage of young people entering the trades?
I guess I'd have to agree with the statement that Alex made. It might be the culture. It might be the fact that a lot of construction-oriented businesses and labor unions took a lot of their workforce from family farms, especially the operating engineers. Today, a big problem that we're trying to resolve right now is the fact that so many kids have been told that they have to have a college degree. There are a lot of kids out there right now that aren't afraid to work with their hands. And once they get their high school education, they're not afraid to go out and actually work. Now, when you complete an apprenticeship in the building trades, it's the equivalent of an associate's degree. Recently, we just came out with a program. The operating engineers have been working on this for almost 3 years now. It's called the Destinations Career Academy. What we're doing is offering a construction class in a virtual setting in a high school. It's a dual enrollment, which means these students will be able to get high school credits and college credits for taking these courses, and it piques their interest in our industry. So we're trying to address some of these issues, and we've thought about this question long and hard, and I think through Destinations Career Academy, it's going to be a step in the right way to start getting some young people interested in the construction trade.
And that just started too, didn't it?
Just started. They just started enrollment. They just started in the fall, and we go to second semester open enrollment December 1st.
Good. And how have the numbers been?
Numbers are great.
Yeah. Good. Good. Kelly, what do you see as the biggest challenge to solving the skilled worker shortage?
I would agree with Alex and Terry regarding it. Unfortunately, construction is still seen as a dirty job, and parents are having a lot of influence on students by pushing them into 4-year methods of education. We here at ABC see a lot of people with a 4-year degree that then come back and decide apprenticeship is the right thing for them now. And so we need to kind of change that image and that positive atmosphere and start promoting great pay and career advancement and the technological changes that are going on in the construction industry.
And Terry, we hear reports about like a workforce challenges, and I was just wondering what your take is on how widespread you think those challenges are for the contractors that you represent.
It's been challenging. I mean, we run the largest apprenticeship program in the state. Right now we got about 520 apprentices, which is a lot of apprentices. But back in 2011, this year we took in over 200, about 220, I believe. Back in 2011, we took in 1. In 2012, we took in 5. Meanwhile, we had people retiring. It was brought up in the earlier panel discussion. People were just retiring. They gave up on the economy. They gave up on our industry. And now we've got all these young people. And the biggest challenge right now is having qualified young people to send out to our contractors. We have some young people sitting on our books right now. We'd like to say our bench was clear, but some of these young people don't have the skill set it takes to swing a 20-ton load over the general public's head. So they're going to have to wait until we mature them a little bit and bring them along.
Yeah, and have you seen much of an impact to project schedules? And
It has. It's affected the schedules. I can tell you this. We have a large training center in Coloma, 400-acre site. It runs off about a $7 million annual budget, and we do what's called skill improvement. And sometimes we'll take some of these young people, if we think we can dispatch them for a certain task, for a certain job, we will bring them up for a crash course on a piece of equipment. And once the instructor feels that that person is qualified to safely run that piece of equipment on a construction site, we'll dispatch them.
How long does that typically take?
Oh, that depends on the individual.
Yeah.
But typically, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Pete, talk a little bit about what role the businesses and education institutions play in development of industry-specific trainings.
Sure. One of the models that we are building is what we call much more of a demand-driven, employer-led, sector-based workforce development model. For too long, and Terry knows this, for too long it was a sort of train and pray that people find work model in the workforce development world. It just doesn't work. Nationally, what we're seeing is a massive trend toward having employers at the table as strategic partners, in particular in 6 key growth areas. Construction is one of them, manufacturing, finance, healthcare, hospitality, and then a cross-sector one with regard to information technology. The industry advisory boards are really comprised of what I call employer champions, employers that really do workforce planning, but also are really engaged in the community and want to be at the table having the kind of in-depth conversations around what the real-time and future workforce needs are, and having an impact around determining and clarifying what are the in-demand career pathways and helping get that message to schools and to teachers and to parents and to career coaches. There's a really pretty significant breakdown between, or at least not breakdown, but certainly the connections between industry and all industries, quite frankly, and our educational institutions and workforce development groups. There's not enough connections there. And so one of the biggest messages, I think, are to parents. One of the things that we try to do is put the in-demand career pathways and really map out what does a starting career in this look like? What do you get paid? What are the qualifications? And then middle skill, what are the next steps? Helping people see those connections, and also just practically speaking, trying to develop some videos that tell a compelling story not from workforce development professionals, but from folks in the industry about what is it like to go through this career and what kind of future can you have. There's a big misnomer, of course. I work in the city of Milwaukee, I live in the city of Milwaukee, and often there's this misnomer that there are no good paying jobs in the city of Milwaukee. It's just not true. There's so many great paying jobs. Construction, the average wage is $63,000. Of course, you don't make that day one. But manufacturing, and construction's competing right now against manufacturers, probably to a lesser extent, not competing as much with healthcare and finance, but skilled marketplace. And for too long, we've not told kids about the rewarding career, and 2, we've also sometimes demonized them for not going into college. It's wrong. There's better messages to send.
Yep, and that's a good discussion. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what we can do to overcome some of these challenges. Kelly, what are some of the short and long-term solutions to the skilled worker shortage?
Sure. I believe this is an industry problem just by the representation that we have up here. We need to come together as an industry, as a construction industry, to actually solve the problem. But then it's also everybody sitting in this room. All of you need to go out and introduce yourself to your high school, maybe your math teacher, maybe you have a tech education program in your school. The last 2 years, we've had youth apprenticeship in the state of Wisconsin. We have about 150 youth apprentices in those programs, and they're getting connected with contractors as we speak. And that's, if we can start to get them a taste of apprenticeship or the trades, and they start to enjoy that, they start to have the camaraderie on the job, they may then choose to go to a registered apprenticeship, which is obviously a larger, I think there's 10,000 construction apprentices in the state of Wisconsin. So if we can start to get, the youth involved in that, and that literally starts with all the people in this room. We have 850 members in the state of Wisconsin. We're always encouraging our members to get out to their local high schools, middle schools. A middle school program is much more long-term approach. Right now in the state of Wisconsin, they're having middle school students start to have a create a career plan. If we miss that opportunity and not have construction as a career path for them, we might not get them until they're 27, 28 years old, which is the average age of our apprentices. And so we're losing that opportunity. Now that's a more long-term approach. I would say short-term approaches, our apprenticeship program is already up and running. We have about 1,100 apprentices in the state. Our programs are very, very strong. We have about 51% of electricians in the state of Wisconsin. And so there's great need for that. But Terry's right. We had many years that people didn't put very many apprentices into the program. And so you can't turn those apprentices out overnight. The other avenue that I think people need to be educated on is there's a lot of people that retired. And so we have those leaders that have left the industry. And so we need to upskill those leaders. So our association does supervisory training and emerging leader training so that kind of your next generation of leaders can take over the workforce.
And Terry, you've talked a little bit about what you guys do in Coloma already, but can you expand on what Local 139 is doing?
We try to do several different forms of reach out, especially in the media. I don't know if anybody has ever seen Building Wisconsin. We come out with episodes. It's a TV episode that we put out. Some of the other trades have participated in it as well. And it introduces our youth to the construction industry, and in a very positive light. And we try to present ourselves as a viable source of income and a lifetime career. I know years ago there used to be the old mindset, well, I could always go work construction. But you know what, the way the industry is today, you can't just come visit our trade and then go back out because people get hurt when visitors come on a construction site. I think another thing that we could do, I realize that right now the biggest part of the operating engineers is road building. And right now there are some legislators that are going to take away the prevailing wage. Well, we're going out and seeing youth and telling them you can come in and make a good living for the rest of your life. Oh, and by the way, your legislators are doing everything they can to hold your wages back. And that may not be so bad. A lot of people can make the argument it's the free market, competitive bidding, and all this other stuff. What the problem is going to be, contractors coming into Wisconsin from other states, because no contractor, no employer right now is going to start cutting their employees' wages. It's just not going to happen. So we may see some visitors from other states come in. And we always used to say that construction is the one job you cannot outsource. Guess what? They found a way to outsource our jobs. We can't bring youth in. And last week was National Apprenticeship Week. And everybody in the government's telling us, get out there and tell these young people. And we did. We participated a lot. But how can we tell these kids, come on into the trades, come into apprenticeship, oh, and by the way, we're going to do everything we can to get somebody from out of state to come in here and take your job. I'm sorry, I'm going off on my tangent.
No, that's okay. That's why we have you up here. No, we're kidding. Yeah, what do you hear, Terry? What do kids say when you tell them that? Like, what do you hear in response to that?
In response to come in and make a good living?
Yeah, and we can't necessarily guarantee you a job because we have some.
Well, that's the ugly part that I'm not really exposing yet. And it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be that bad, but construction is the one purchase that the government makes where you do not have to have the best quality. You do not have to have, you just take the lowest bid. Anything else, if you're buying cars for the government, you're buying computers, anything else, you can go by the name, you can go by their track record. But if somebody comes into Wisconsin and gives the lowest bid, you don't even have, you have to take the lowest bid. There's no best quality. So our contractors, and I'm talking union and non-union. Wisconsin's got some good non-union road builders, okay? I'm going to say that. So this is not a union, non-union issue. But we have to warranty our work. And if somebody comes into Wisconsin and pulls out of here and decides to go broke and put the money in their pocket, them and all their employees, there's no warranty. So the taxpayers pay for it again. So this is a bad, and as far as telling the young people this, I'm refraining from it right now because it'll certainly hurt our recruiting efforts. But this is the reality of our industry. This is where we're heading.
Yeah, it is. Pete, talk a little bit about what Employ Milwaukee does.
Sure. So as I started in my opening comments where we serve job seekers and businesses, I think one of the frameworks is that how can we best use the input that we get from employers, from our industry advisory boards, to use our resources much more strategically. So we're about a $20 million a year organization, and we contract out about 60 to 70% of our work. But to date, we haven't always had the resources placed in the most strategic areas. So what we've done in the construction sector is the most recent example of this. Where Mike Fabishak from the AGC is our chair. We issued a proposal for a construction sector services provider. We pooled some of our funding and said, particularly with the large number of public projects that are going on right now and some of the very aggressive local hiring requirements, we wanted to make sure that we were putting some resources out there to make sure that we could respond. So we would follow this model for other sectors, but the industry really informs how are we orienting people to the trades, telling them the good and the bad and the ugly about certain professions, wanting to have the construction industry at the table and helping pre-screen candidates before they ever go into any training in the first place, so that they really know it's both a service to both the employers as well as to the job seeker. You don't want someone getting into the wrong field and deciding 6 months down the road. And then really, how can we make sure that industry is at the table to commit to mentoring and providing internships and serving as apprenticeship sponsors and really taking the high road approaches to hiring that set the tone. Again, the construction sector is competing against manufacturing in particular for skilled workers. And so there's a vested interest in employers really being at the table, and we're trying to provide that vehicle for how can their input be used more strategically from a public workforce system.
And Terry, you talked a little bit about the perception before, but talk a little bit more about that and just how you go about changing the perception of the industry.
Well, for instance, last week during the National Youth Apprenticeship Week, just for the heck of it, we invited students from 3 neighboring schools near Coloma, and just to see what kind of interest we would get. And I'll tell you what, we got about 70 students showed up, 2 principals, 3 guidance counselors, all very interested because they really didn't know who we are, what we do, and it was a great day. We had the Department of Workforce Development, the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards, I know I'm forgetting some other people, but there was a lot of state entities showed up and spoke, and we explained our Destinations Career Academy and what's available to them, and we tried to show them that, look, we're not the knuckle draggers that some people would like to perceive us as. We're intelligent people, and we take a lot of pride in our industry, and you could see these kids, you could see their eyes opening up more and more as we gave our presentation, and it was refreshing to be able to reach these young people, because for years our industry has been trying to find ways to reach high school students. It's been difficult, and our industry has hurt from it. So we're going to try to turn that around, and I really saw some tangible results last week.
That's great. That's good. Pete, talk a little bit about the specific areas of need that pop out, and how are you working, how's Employ Milwaukee working to meet those needs?
So, I mean, from what I hear, all trades, and this is borne out by both the national and local surveys, and the survey done by the AGC, where 70% of contractors responded that they're challenged to find craft workers. In particular, we're hearing about shortages, iron workers, bricklayers, carpenters, specifically pile drivers, millwrights, very specific positional areas. I think the key thing is to have, as a workforce intermediary, is to have a really close working relationship with the industry. We do that via our partnership with WRTP Big Step, the Wisconsin Regional Training Partnership. Big Step, for years, even before my current role, I worked at the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. We put very aggressive requirements on our sewer and water contractors to hire and utilize a local workforce. When you do that, you have to create a mechanism where community residents can know what are the specific pathways and then connect to an intermediary that's trusted by the industry to do those very sector-specific trainings so that people aren't wasting their time in training that doesn't fit and serve them well.
And Terry, the government at the state and national level has become active in workforce initiatives for skilled pathways like construction and manufacturing. Why is there an increased pressure to build this workforce?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before when the pipeline started emptying out on us. And the infrastructure is in more serious, I mean, everybody talks about roads, and I'm going to get off roads for a minute. Let's talk about the underground infrastructure. Let's talk about the stuff we can't see. I mean, this stuff is failing. And there is going to be a time when we're going to be faced with the reality that either the ecosystem is going to go to hell because our underground infrastructure is breached so severely, or we start replacing and repairing. Our wastewater treatment plants are way outdated. And there are things beyond, we're going to start having serious issues with a lot of the verticals. But there's just things beyond. We keep talking about roads and bridges and everything else. So I firmly believe that the workforce that we have tomorrow is going to be mostly basically infrastructure, geared towards infrastructure, rebuild, replacement, and repair.
Definitely needed. Kelly, as a board member of the Wisconsin Technical College System, what are you in the system trying to accomplish?
Sure. We are connecting with the K through 12 system in order to have a kind of seamless transition from high school systems into viable career options. Skilled trades is obviously a strong, viable career. We're working with, promoting apprenticeship within the technical school system so that we're not a separate unit. A lot of times apprenticeship is a separate unit than the associate degree programs. And as Terry mentioned earlier, there is a direct connection. You can come out of your apprenticeship program with an associate's degree in technical studies, journey worker. So that's a nice approach, but we need to kind of integrate those systems so that it's not an afterthought. Apprenticeship's not an afterthought. It's just you get into you graduate from high school, you go into apprenticeship, you graduate from apprenticeship, you have your associate's degree. Can I take one moment?
Absolutely.
So a lot of times when we talk about construction, we talk about the negativity out of it. And again, this is going to be an industry approach that comes together. I just have one little story that just came up yesterday. I had a young lady that went through our construction craft labor apprenticeship, and she was struggling with reading. And we were able to get all of her books on an audio tape so that she could listen while she was taking her long drive. It's a block program so that they come together about a week out of the year, every other week for education. And at first she wanted to drop out of the program. She didn't think that she could succeed in this program. She was one woman, and the rest of the men were in the classroom. Once we got her the audiobooks, I saw tears in her eyes because she was so excited that she understood this stuff, and she was starting to become a leader in the classroom. We just had her last week for the National Apprenticeship Week highlighted, and now she's graduated several years ago. Now she is the safety manager and travels to all the locations advising other apprentices and construction workers on how to be successful and safe on the jobs. So this changed this woman's entire life. It changed her outcome on who she is as a person, who she is as a mother to her child, and is a role model for other people in her company. And so there's a lot of positives and things that come out of taking a trade and kind of taking it by the bull and, running with it. And we have numerous examples of that, of how people have really changed their family tree and how they see themselves and how they can be successful in the industry. So I'm sure all of us have those examples, but we really need to promote those examples so that people understand this is a viable option. Yes, there's negativity, and yes, there's, economic downturns, but she actually completed her apprenticeship during the economic downturn, and now look where she is. She's a very successful woman in the industry.
Yeah, it's a great success story, and it's incumbent on all of us up here to tell those stories.
Right.
With some of we'll switch gears here a little bit. With some of the high-profile projects that are going on around Milwaukee, we see the changing skyline. Like the Bucks Arena is requiring contractors to meet minority and local resident hiring goals. So Terry, what are some of the challenges that contractors face with these goals?
Well, you try to hire from the community. In fact, the Bucks project has a mandate that you hire from the community, and there's a lot of outreach that not just the operating engineers and the other trades, skilled trades, but our employers as well. There are recruiting videos that are put out by some of our general contractors, Bolt, Myron, Findorf, Cullen. They all come out with these videos, and when we go to job fairs, people get tired of seeing our videos on, so also we borrow one from one of our partners. What we try to do is go in and work with community-based organizations for our recruitment. I got to say, Employ Milwaukee does a great job. Big Step does a great job, and they help us get over the first hump, which is they filter through the people that are serious about coming in. And what was mentioned before, Kelly mentioned the hot and cold running industry. Retention gets to be a real challenge. Someday the Bucks Arena is going to be finished, and we want to be able to retain some of the people that we recruited during that project. We had that challenge during the Marquette interchange. We were able to bring a lot of people from the inner city in, and they got a great learning opportunity on the Marquette interchange, but then they set the zoo interchange back several years. So we lost a number of our recruits. So what we try to do is we're trying to make sure that this industry at least has some steady, even flow, even though I always call it a roller coaster. But to these apprentices, it's very important that we get some kind of steady income, some kind of steady work for these recruits. But that's what we're trying to do with the Bucks Arena.
Great. And Alex, as we wrap it up here, just kind of bring us home, what are some of the other big projects in the Milwaukee area that need a lot of workers?
Of course, we just talked about the Bucks Arena. That's the big one. That's the $524 million arena, and plenty of other developments going on in that 8-block area near downtown Milwaukee, excuse me. But of course, there's plenty either also ongoing, like Northwestern Mutual headquarters building's been going on a while. That's expected to complete sometime late next year. And then there's work in the streetcar, the downtown streetcar, Milwaukee streetcar project. That work has really just begun with moving utility equipment. They recently named a general contractor on that. And then you can point to things like the Couture project that's also just recently started gearing up. Demolition work on that started mid-October. And then even further down the road, and you can see plenty of developments and everything going on for the next several years at least, so that should mean some steady work. Things like just yesterday, there was a city approval taken up for the Hamas Company downtown headquarters building. That's another $27 million construction project that'll take place, soon. And honestly, it seems like some weeks it just I use all my energy possible to keep up with all the developments, especially in the Milwaukee area. There just seems to be a new one every day or so.
Yep. So definitely enough work to go around. Now we just need the workers to fill the positions. So thanks to the panel. Great discussion. Appreciate you guys coming up here. And are there any questions from anybody? Yes, sir. The question is, can you add requirements to public jobs?
That's actually, it's been done on a municipal level, and I would love to see it on a state level. But in the meantime, we can continue to do it on a municipal level. It's called the best value contractor. And when you have a hearing before a project is let, or after the bids are open, you can call for a hearing. And if you have a good case to present as to why this contractor is not responsible enough for that project, you would have the authority to take it and give it to the second lowest bidder. So it's being done on, it is, the model has been proven. Yeah, I guess that's what we're gonna have to do, is see if we can take it through the municipalities and get it done that way. I'd love to see the state adopt it. I think the taxpayers would deserve that.
Anything else? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So would that fall into like responsible contractor language then?
Correct, yes.
Any other questions?
It's for Kelly. Kelly, I was just curious, you said that ABC runs a apprenticeship program, so is your guys' apprenticeship program federally recognized or follow any of the state rules?
All of them. So we're both federally and state recognized. We're a bona fide apprenticeship program certified by the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, the gentleman on the left.
You mentioned that the individual companies and folks in the room and those that will be watching the video online become more active and involved in this process. Could each of you go through one by one and give some advice as to exactly some of the things that they can be doing and how to do that? For example, maybe working with the schools and the Rotary clubs and the chambers and whatnot. What types of things have you seen work, and how would they get started on that? Because that's obviously something that would be new to them. So Alex, I don't know if you want to start it?
Oh, for me to give advice, maybe it never hurts to highlight any kind of accomplishments you have that with the media. I'm always willing to, talk about that, whatever you'd like to highlight. I mean, yeah, beyond that, using those kind of communication tools beyond just, newspapers, social media like that.
Yeah, I
It
think,
never hurts to promote.
sorry, I think we mentioned it before. Sure.
I've made an attempt to go to some of the high schools around our area and want to bring in a young, person just to kind of expose them. And I don't get much feedback. I'm not sure, and I thought I've heard about some schools. I thought Sussex Hamilton had a program for construction or kind of an introductory one. And so if somebody could come up with the people, the contact people, I'd be willing to do that. Again, our profits are, so slim with it being competitive, but I think we as an employer have that responsibility. And I've tried that, but just kind of hit a roadblock, and I don't have all that time to spend looking up these different. So if you could have a resource list of where these young people, and I might suggest, I spent some time in Germany studying their apprenticeship program. They start at age 12.
Yep.
High school is way too late.
Alex said he'd be glad to compile that list for you. Kelly, can you talk a little bit about
Sure. We've had the same experience. So don't let it, stop you, because we've had really great successes. Our office is right in Dane County. And so McFarland High School has been really successful with a program. They will be coming out with youth apprenticeships are run by, it's a little too much detail, but they're run by CISAs. And these CISAs are kind of like a consortium of schools. And they will be coming out with a registry on who will be doing youth apprenticeship. And I believe they're going to break that down to construction or architectural, those type of things. So that might be your first step, is contacting the CISA. So like if Sussex is involved in a bigger consortium, and that is available online. I don't believe the youth apprenticeship is listed just yet, but the CISAs are listed.
CISA?
Yeah, I don't know. CESA.
CESA.
But so that might be a resource. If you can get we've been very successful with, if you can get a teacher that you know, even if it's in a different department, because guidance counselors these days do not have time to really deal with career counseling. They are dealing mostly with how to get people successful in the high schools. And so they don't have the ability to meet with us and spend any time. But we have been successful with individual teachers and then starting to get into a program. And then make sure that you bring a tradesperson with you. That's been very successful. Instead of, no offense, but me up there speaking, if I can bring Cassie, who I was talking about earlier, in to speak with them, that really excites them and can get their message really nicely across. And you'll be surprised, a lot of people are willing to come and talk to a class. So we've just been picking up the phone. But I do understand timing is an issue, but if you can get kind of one avenue, it can really pay off.
Pete, can you talk a little bit about
Yes, contact me. I have a sector specialist for each of the sectors, and I have one, Jose Galvan, for the construction sector, and he is our youth apprenticeship coordinator. And there are a variety of different ways to plug in, from serving as speakers at recruitment events to serving on panels, and connecting with some of the career coaches that we've placed in high school. So we want to make that as easy. We haven't, the workforce entities and educational institutions have not made it easy for industry to plug in. We need to make that easier.
As I said before, we spent about 3 years and invested a considerable amount of money in our Destinations Career Academy. We plowed the path, and we are making it available to all of the building trades in the state of Wisconsin. We made the initial investment. Obviously, they're going to have to spend some money for their specific trades. But when you think about it, now we had people out with GoPros on job sites, and kids can actually, in a virtual setting, can actually experience what it's like to be on a job site, whether they're a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, iron worker, and they can sit, and let's face it, this next generation is a video generation, and this is the way to get to them. And so the carpenters are going to be the first ones. They've shown some real strong desire to be part of this, so I believe the next Destinations Career Academy will be the carpenters, but eventually I would like to see all the trades so that we can get all these youth. And you're right, Germany is so far ahead of us, and they hold apprenticeship in very high esteem.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Peter? Yeah, good job, man. Thank you.